So, that new level 5 vision got announced, huh? Well, as much as I would like to be excited like I was for the previous ones, I'm gonna be honest, I've just kinda lost all my hype for this company. Their games, their announcements, their presentations, everything. Which, I mean, it's kind of a shame really, because in 2023, when they first announced their so called Great Revival, I was really on board. I was really hyped. I mean, it had been a while since Level 5 had brought their games to the West. So, seeing that they were announcing 5 games, and they were all coming internationally, not just in Japan, was really something special. I mean, you had all of their big major franchises Professor Layton, Inazuma 11, Fantasy Life, even Megaton Musashi, which was previously a Japan only franchise, and the new Deca Police game, which everyone, even new and old Level 5 fans, were really interested in. But unfortunately, from that starting point, the hype went nowhere but down and down. All 5 games were promised to be released that year in 2023, but none of them did. The first game came out in the first half of 2024, and that wasn't even a so-called new game. Megaton Musashi Wired isn't exactly a new game in the Megaton Musashi franchise. It's the best of collection including the content of both the previous games in the franchise, Megaton Musashi and Megaton Musashi Cross, with some new added story content and some extra side content. Now, to be fair, it was the first title in the series to be available worldwide, and to give them some credit, at least they got something out. Unfortunately, no other game would release until the following year in May of 2025, that being Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time, and another game being Inazuma 11 Victory Road, which released only in November of 2025. So while they had announced all of these games in 2023, there was no clear roadmap for when the games were going to release, what we should expect, etc. Which really just kind of drained all of the hype for these games, because if no one had anything to expect about when it's going to come out, no one really got excited anymore. Announcements would come and go with people getting their hopes up for a close release date, just to be hit with the fact that it's delayed for the following year. I mean, you had their level 5 visions in 2023, which were basically just, here's some new info, and the fact that it's getting delayed, and not much else. Which was just equal amounts of both hype and disappointment, which I don't even know how that's possible. And of course, who can forget the latest level 5 vision from 2 years ago, by the way? It was supposed to come in the first half of 2024, either in March or April. But nope, we didn't even get that. It was delayed during the summer, but it only happened at the end of August with months of radio silence in between, which is just really strange. And then again, everything they announced was just delayed release dates. Most of their games got delayed to the following year, 2025, and Deca Police got pushed back to 2026 and beyond. And then of course, on top of that, they had to announce Holy Horror Mansion, and Inazuma 11 Remake, which I totally didn't forget about. But while it is a cool concept, of course, once again, Level 5 kinda had to muddle everything. Because not only was it labeled as a brand new game, but it was branded as a Yokai Watch spiritual successor. Which, as we know now from a very discreet interview with Akira Hino, CEO of Level 5, it's not actually a replacement or successor, it's merely just something inspired by Yokai Watch. But unfortunately, somehow, Level 5 didn't really communicate at all. They kept using confusing terms like a new flow in the series or Yokai Watch next project, which was very confusing because it didn't even give us a definitive answer as to whether it was a Yokai Watch spiritual successor or not, which was just really frustrating, and especially led to a lot of debate online where people were just really mad at the game for not being Yokai Watch, which, while it does seem like spoiled behavior at first, I can't empathize, as Level 5 suddenly and seemingly throwing the series out of the window for this new stuff that just kind of looks like what you wanted, but it's not really what you want. Yeah, it must have been really frustrating. Of course, now we know that Yokai Watch is just on hiatus. They're thinking about ways to bring back the series, and they want to do it right this time. Which, I mean, that's a good sign, because in 2018, 2019, and the 2020s, there were multiple Yokai Watch reboots, which all just worked with varying degrees of success to reinvigorate the franchise, but never fully succeeded in my opinion, due to varying factors. So, I'm glad they're taking a deep, holistic look at the franchise. But unfortunately, that wasn't even the half of it, because apparently, the Holy Horror Mansion trailer had a ton of AI-generated assets in the background, I'll put some examples on screen now so you can see. To be fair, it is a concept, so it could just be placeholder concept art, and there won't be any AI usage in the final game, which I suppose is a flimsy yet somewhat reasonable excuse. But even so, why in the infinite inferno would you present a concept? And I'm not just talking about the fact that Level 5's reputation was forever damaged from that point on because they used AI in one of their game trailers. Concepts are the beginner's level of what the game is going to be about. In a sense, concepts are just like ideas. They are hints and suggestions of what the game may be like, but nothing is concrete or final. I could have made a detailed video analysis going over the trailer for Holy Horror Mansion, but I mean, none of the things they presented could make it into the final game because it's just a concept. They may keep the core idea, but it could be totally revamped and changed. Literally anyone can present a concept. You even see tons of people make concept game trailers all the time, without even having to resort to AI, I might add. What is supposed to make this interesting or cool news is that the concept is concrete. We are getting a game where this does happen. Or maybe it wasn't a concept and it's just an early development or beta trailer, which in that case, it's just weird to call it a concept because it's clearly not. It's an early development, and they should have just led with that. And this would all be fine if Level 5 was, communicating what we needed to know and didn't leave it up to fans to read between the lines. But then, of course, the worst part was, after that Level 5 2024 vision, Level 5 just never followed up with pretty much anything. We got Tokyo Game Show trailers for 2024 and 2025, which showed a couple of scenes for gameplay for some of their more prominent games, and some new release dates, but nothing concrete. And up until now, when they announced this new vision, there's been no substantial news or anything about, what the heck is happening with any of their games. Which, to be honest, has just kind of caused me to completely forget about Level 5. I genuinely don't really care anymore about any of their projects. Not just because of the AI thing, but because they just haven't given us any news or any indication of what they're doing. I'm glad we're getting the vision now, but honestly, I'm at a point where I really don't care anymore. This is something that should have just come out last year. Even just a snippet of news would have been helpful instead of just nothing. Which, I mean, to be fair, they did release games last year, but in terms of other news, we just kind of got nothing. And to make matters worse, they're not even previewing what they're going to show in the presentation, which is just somewhat baffling. It works for other companies because they're showing tons of new projects that are unknown before the presentation. But these are about games we've been listening intently for development news, like Professor Layton and the New World of Steam. At the very least, they could have done something like last time, where they put up pictures of the games we know, and then put a bunch of question marks, instead of just being oh, it's a surprise, just better wait and see. Because, that's just gonna lead to plenty of failed expectations. The presentation is called Craftsmanship, and Holy Horror Mansion is also known as Project Ghostcraft, so if they are going to show something for Holy Horror Mansion, this is probably the time, although it is kind of baffling that they completely forgot about last year's supposed big cross-media showcase for Holy Horror Mansion. In addition, I hope we get a concrete release date and a lot more shown off for Deca Police and Layton, which are coming out sooner than the Holy Horror Mansion. So I would hope that they'll be the main focus, and Holy Horror Mansion and also the Inazuma 11 remake will be near the latter half of the presentation. On top of that, with all the AI stuff, which I really don't want to get into, like them posting AI slop for April Fools, and talking about AI as the future of game development, it's just kind of pushed the public reception of the company down further and further, which, it's just kind of sad to see that the company that was once renowned for great creative vision, no pun intended, and amazing characters and worlds, just kind of go off the deep end. I'll still be interested in the games and the news if they do something worthwhile, but I just don't feel like buying any of their games or following any of their news anymore. Especially if they're not going to communicate with their audience and remain insistent in AI-made games, which would be a big spit in the face for a presentation subtitled Craftsmanship to so heavily feature AI-made content. So, yeah, hopefully something comes with Level 5 Vision. I'm happy for those that are excited, but at this stage, I'm just kind of done with Level 5 for now. So, until Level 5 gets their act together, farewell, Yokai Watchers.